And if you have any questions before we start. Any questions on the chapter 1 or 2 in terms of answering the classwork?
No.
No? Okay, silence gives consent, and I got 1 no.
So, no, sorry. A little bit too fast for me. The questions are the 1 through 4 on the homework sheet thing.
No, that's on the instruction sheet.
Hello?
That's homework. Did you
Hello?
attend class 1?
Yeah.
Did you attend?
Joey
You attended the first class?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so the 4 questions on the instruction sheet is your homework questions. Okay, you are to select 1 essay, and there are dates attached to each of the essays, and you submit that for a grade.
No, you were saying something about questions for each chapter.
Yeah, so there's a second, right in that same email, if you got the instruction sheet, you would have gotten a class worksheet. And each week or each class, you are to answer the questions on the chapter. So each chapter.
I think there's a delay. I think there's a delay, Miss Bullet, but I found it. Sorry, I found it.
Okay, so are there any questions? For some reason, I don't think, I just got a low battery. Nay.
Stu, if you're there, I got you.
Miss Bullard. Okay, I see where I was added. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, Temple, stop that.
Excuse me.
Did we lose Miss Bullet?
Oh, we did?
Yeah, she's not inside the class. At the
Oh.
moment.
Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I got hit off completely. The computer signing back up. Let me see if one of these. Okay. Hi, sorry, before we got hit off, I think it was Joey asking about the classwork. Joey,
I found the sheet.
classwork?
Sorry, I found the sheet. So I printed it, but I missed it.
Okay.
So now I understand that after every chapter, I have a worksheet to work from, or work on. So
Okay.
now I understand that. Thank you.
Okay, great, great. And everybody else is clear on the classwork?
I have a question, Ms. Bullard. The question I have is, we have assignment due. When is the earliest date? When is the first date for the first assignment?
The 19th.
Okay. Okay. Phew. All righty.
Miss Bullard,
Hi.
I don't know if it was just me, but I don't know if it's because the classes, we're doing 2 classes a week as opposed to the class before. It just feels like a lot to me. Like I'm really struggling to grasp it all, and I'm a bit nervous.
Okay, Ebony, it is a lot. Normally it's 10 weeks, but ICA is starting in January, and we
Yeah, I
have
know.
quite a number of persons trying to complete this so they can go on to ICA. And so that's why it's a bit of a rush. But it is normally, if you have 10 weeks, it's a little lighter, but it's very heavy, just so those persons can go into ICA. So I don't know if you would want to defer. There's going to be another session in January where
No. I go on
you
to
need to go to
ICU.
ICA as well, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so yeah, so we trying to accommodate y'all as best we could. So it
I
is heavy.
appreciate it. It's just I just have to, I don't know, get myself together.
Okay, and so and I always tell persons, and even when it's the 10 weeks, we still have some persons who, you really need to speak to the persons at home and perhaps your supervisor and tell them, the baby sitting on the lap, the trying to keep children and cook and listen, it won't work. This is an investment, and I always say, we could have bought a Gucci bag or go on a vacation, but we invested, and so you want to get a full return on your investment. And so
Yeah.
speak to your spouses and let them know, please bear with me now. I need some extra time. This is going to be short and sweet. Let me get through this, and I'll pay you back in January, or I'll do something for you in January. But the picking up from school or dropping and preparing the kids and working on school, it's tough on its own. Okay, so you have to ask somebody to help you during this period, and you will be successful. And it's only for 5 weeks. And I've had husbands come to see me at the school even, and I said, "Sir, your wife is very educated, but she needs your help." Okay, and even I encourage persons on the days that you have school, ask if you could take your lunch hour at 4 o'clock, and so you don't have to fight the traffic. You're not rushed. Because it takes me like half an hour to unwind. If I don't sit in front of this computer at 5:30 and have a glass of water, I won't know what to say to you. Okay, so try and organize yourself, try and get some help during this period. And you already know when your exam date is. Please arrange with your organizations if they give you a study leave. You sign up for your study leave now because that's close to Christmas. Or if you don't have a study leave, take a vacation day. I promise you, it'll be worth it. Okay? Okay, and that's the best advice I can give you. You're gonna need some help for these 5 weeks.
When is the final exam, Ms. Bullard?
I think it's scheduled for December the 18th.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Demerit, you have your hand raised? No, Ebony, are you good?
Hi, yes, I got confirmation. I thought we had to do 4 other questions, but they're saying we only have to do 1.
Right, right.
Right,
So
because I
please-
missed the first class.
Okay, so there's the recording. Please listen to the recording so you will understand everything that's required in the class. Also, please, right at the top, it says 1 essay. So just read what it says and you'll get a lot of information, okay?
Not a
And then
problem.
let me know if you still have some issues.
Okay.
Good night, Miss Bullard.
Hi.
Okay, I heard Joey mention that after every class there would be a class work.
Yeah.
What is that about? Because I might have missed that.
In the welcome email, you would have gotten 3 attachments. Correct?
I did.
Okay, one of those
Yes, ma'am.
attachments is classwork.
That's with the newspaper reading, the
No, there's a second sheet
class
that
participation.
says
No?
classwork, and it has questions for every chapter. Did you listen
Okay,
to
I'll
the
go back and look at the
recording?
email.
Did you listen to the recording of the first class? Sorry?
You mean the recording for the first class?
Yeah, you said you missed the first class,
Not in
right?
its entirety. No, I didn't
Okay,
listen
but
to the
listen to the
entire.
recording, so you'll have all the instructions, or it won't be clear.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that. I'll do that. Right now I driving, just trying to get home. Just finished picking up baby from daycare, so I
Right.
struggling too. But
Right,
I
so
I
that's
getting
right.
home right now.
So you definitely need some help, okay? Please ask somebody to help you and
Yeah.
pick that precious baby up for you and for the next 5 weeks. And so you could be to class on time and you could have time to settle in and retain this, because there's no use Miss Bullet talking for 2.5 hours and it goes over the top of your head because you're tired.
Yeah, and that's why I'm grateful for the recordings too. I often listen to them more than once.
Okay, that's good. But like I said, try to get some help for the next 5 weeks. So because again, this is heavy information, and you have to be at peace. You have to rejuvenate yourself. You have to clear your mind so your mind can retain this, or this will go right over the top of your head. Okay, so organize yourself so you can retain it. Okay, and I promise you, it's going to be beneficial if you just relax. You can retain it and be receptive and then participate and ask questions. But if you're driving and the baby come in a minute, all that could distract you. Okay, so try to get some help.
Miss Bullard,
Yeah.
I don't know any of the ladies in the class with me, and I don't know, some persons are morning persons and some persons are evening persons. But I know for me, what worked for me in the last class as well as what's working for me in this class, I get up early before my household is up. And that's when I do a lot of my reading, because I'm able to retain more because that's my quiet time. So before everybody gets up, I use that time to do some catching up and studying and reading and different stuff. So just a suggestion to anybody else who may want to try that, because in the evening, like right now, I'm in my bedroom. My family is in the living room area. So, the noise, the cooking, the homework, the this and that, working late, different things. So the morning works for me. So it's just a suggestion if anybody may want to try that.
Okay, and thank you, Ebony, for sharing, because a lot of us, have that experience. I know when I was in school many years ago, I had small kids and it was very difficult. But when I got some help, and I, like you said, I got up at 5 a.m. and I can read and retain, so whatever time works for you, you have to have at least 2 hours of quiet time and then 2 hours to rejuvenate yourself. Because if you're going to go back to work, you're going to go from crazy to crazy. You can't go from work to school, back to work, or home dealing with the kids, and that will make you crazy. So please, 4 hours, 2 hours to unwind, 2 hours to study per week. Okay, ask the spouses or somebody at home to help you with that. Okay, and you'll be successful. Okay, and even after you finish class, maintain your 2 hours for yourself to unwind, feel good, and rejuvenate yourself. Okay? All right, good. And that will help take off some of the pressure and help decrease the stress level. Okay? Okay, good. So let's talk up to the persons who would have read the newspaper and want to share.
Well, I read the newspaper. This is Patricia.
Okay?
And well, I read throughout the week, but the thing that caught me this week was Charles Luttrell. He's inspector of the central bank. And he was talking about how burdensome bank opening or the KYC is in the Bahamas. And he compared that to the United States and Canada, how easy it is to go and open a bank account compared to the amount of paperwork we have to do in the Bahamas. So I thought that was very interesting, seeing that we're talking about money laundering and knowing your client. But he said
Okay, and what did he suggest? Because he would be the person who decides. I mean, they did relax some of the requirements where they, because FACA and CRS covers residency. I'm not certain if you still have to get proof of address, but you have to get, proof of residency, which I guess in turn is a proof of address. But I know they say you need 2 forms of contact, which could be an email or a telephone number. So they had
That was his
requirements.
recommendation.
Yeah, but
His
they're still
recommendation, you
asking.
should.
Yeah, they're still asking for proof of address.
But I think
But-
he was talking about how long it takes. Because I remember I remember opening a bank account just September. And it took me a whole day. And in fact, I sent ahead the administrator, sorry, the bank representative, I sent the NIB, the passport, everything, but it took me the whole day just to open a bank account. And when I took my daughter to school in September, honestly, it took like less than 20 minutes and we were able to do it at the ATM. And she was able to have a debit card right there and then. But here it takes forever, so I understand what he was saying.
Right, but he would be the person to push forward guidelines and law changes to ensure that, the process is not so
The ease of business.
requires so much time. So that's why
Right.
I'm saying, what did he say? Because
He
you are
suggested
in charge of the banks.
he suggested, like you said, the email rather than using your utility bill as a proof of address, you use a telephone number or email so that it helps with the ease of business of opening accounts. But what I found interesting about his commentary is that while he is suggesting that the measures be relaxed for KYC requirements, the Bahamas, on the other hand, as you said, Ms. Bullard, in our first meeting, the Bahamas is we're almost like in the red zone, or we're slightly in the red zone in terms of our compliance policies on a global standard.
Nearly in the blockade.
No,
Well, red being bad, if whether it's red or
we are one step away from being risk rated as high. We're like
right.
high as a country, right?
Right.
But that does not mean we cannot relax some of the requirements. That's not the only thing that's going to cause us to be blacklisted. There are many other things. But in terms of KYC, the issue is that insufficient data, forms not completed correctly, aliases being used, information not being corroborated is our problem, because Central Bank had a seminar that I attended where they said across the industry, the KYC that's being collected is disastrous. Photocopies are distorted. The salespeople certifying true and correct, and they never meet these people. Then you upload a black and white picture to a system, and when you try, because you're keeping documents electronically, when you try and print it 1 year later, it's a distorted copy. So you must upload in color. Stuff like that is our issue. Deficient KYC is the issue for the Bahamas.
Sorry, on a global level.
Yeah.
Right. So if it is that our KYC standards are lacking, then that means they have to be
No,
beefed
it's
up,
the
right?
people, it's the people that are lacking, it's the training.
Okay, because
Somebody
he's
should have
saying the
to train you
measures.
to photocopy.
I
Somebody
understand.
should have to train you on looking at somebody's passport and not because the person told you their name Bob, you write Bob instead of Robert.
But hear me. He's saying that the measures should be relaxed where you simply use one form of ID, right? And another requirement could be your email address. So if I use an identification and my email address, then how do we know where I'm resident?
Okay, so let me just say, Patricia, when he says it should,
This
okay,
is
the law
Joey,
only
sorry.
requires, oh, sorry, Joey. Yeah, the law only requires one form of ID, okay? And the Swiss
Right.
go along with the law. However, the Canadian banks say that's too risky. So the Canadian
Right.
banks are more stringent. So they put in, you know, they
Bring
consider
extra stuff.
human error. And so they say, listen, this is a nation of friends, lovers, and family. Please ask for two forms of ID and we may get one. That you have to know the culture of your people.
Right.
So it's
And
more
they ask for a proof of
training
address,
issue.
right?
Yeah. And
Sorry?
also, I just wanted to point out too, like if you're going to use your voter's card as a form of ID, that will not be able to be accepted as a proof of address as well. You cannot use one document for both purposes.
Okay,
So
but
two
do you see,
would be
would you
needed.
even, would you take a voter's card, especially the people out of Abaco and Freeport where they just crossed it out and wrote over it or put white paper or white out on it? I mean, is that really legitimate? And the other day I went to NIB and NIB would not accept my driver's license because they have no faith in the driver's license department. So you have to fix those internal problems first before you know what I mean? Before you decrease anything, that you have to fix. Like one government agency should be able to accept another government agency's ID. You know, you
Right.
can't say the driver's license plates too slack, and God knows you could have paid where you get that license from. No, we need your NIB card.
That's why I thought it was alarming that he said that the measures need to be relaxed. Like, no, they can't because we have no faith in these systems.
Right. So that's the problem.
We can't relax them, but I thought that was very reckless of him to say.
Okay, it was, but and he would be the person in charge of suggesting or approving that they are relaxed because he's the
Mhm.
head of banks. But
Right.
he knows the deficiencies have not been addressed and they need to be fixed. I mean, even in you know, my institution, we still have documents in Mandarin. Nobody speaks Mandarin. They were never translated, and Spanish and in the law plainly said it has to be in English. So our
Wow.
KYC is gravely deficient.
Wow.
Okay, yes, so that's what the issue is. But if we want to maintain, and you know, persons are screaming ease of doing business all over because it's not only with the banks and opening an account. If you go to water and sewage, it's a horrendous process. If you go to BPL, oh my God, take your firstborn and some blood to get
Yep.
your life turned on. Yeah, so it is the whole system needs to be revamped. And if we are going to remain current and be able to compete or be on the same level as America, then we need to fix these things. We need to get to a point where you can open an account at the ATM and it happens within 5 minutes. But see, competition is so stiff in America. If you don't, you get left behind. If you don't have the up-to-date technology, you get left behind. So yeah, it's a lot of work. So hopefully more persons get training and they take it serious. Okay, but we do have the framework in place. It's just not being enforced. And then we have the same persons in positions for the last 10 years who don't even realize that the laws have changed. And so they still operating on their, you know, the old laws.
Right.
Old forms, outdated forms. I went to a place to open up an account, their form said 2003.
Wow.
What does that mean?
They ain't checking.
Another place said the Bankers and Trust Act of 1956. I said, what?
They
Of
ain't checking. That's what that
1956
means.
on your phone?
Well, apparently the securities commissions didn't order them, wasn't on them to check to see if they have all these stuff updated.
Well, see, that's it. Listen, there's an audit plan, and when the commission goes in, they only can check a certain set of stuff. They can't check the entirety of, every function within the organization. So what they first do is they ask senior management, are there any queries? Are there concerns? Are there any, what would you like me to check?
What would you like me to check? Okay.
Yes, they ask, like, if you had any issues, did you have any cyber security issues? Did you have any theft? Do you have any customer complaints? And so based on what senior management says, then they have their audit plan, and then they probably check 5 other functions, right? And so now an audit is supposed to be in line with your risk rating. So if your institution is rated low, that's every 3 years, medium every 2 years, high every year, that's how you will be reviewed. Okay.
But if you're coming in asking me those questions, I'm not gonna admit to all of that because I don't want you there that long.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you don't want a proper. I mean, if you do what you're supposed to do, then you're worried about it. You would check. We had some fraud, and we said, yeah, could you confirm that our controls are sufficient to mitigate fraud? And so they said, okay, they'll check. And they do, like, they pick a percentage, like 25 high risk, 25 low, 25 medium accounts to ensure that enough sufficient controls are in place, and then they make suggestions. We have to move away from audit being a threat. Back in the day, persons used to be afraid of audit and say they come to cost us, lose us our jobs or shut us down. But gone are those days. You best work with the auditors and ensure that they are your friends, and if you need any training, you ask them questions and you ask them suggestions on how to protect your institution. No more they with us, they ain't against us. Okay, and the more you work with them, the more of us not going to jail, because they'll say, okay, I've spoken to Ms. Bullitt. From her knowledge, I can tell that this is just an infraction, or she followed procedure and she was not negligent. But if we hiding from them, or Ms. Bullitt wasn't cooperating, she was not forthcoming, there was more she could do, to ensure that the institution was protected, and she didn't do it. Okay, so you decide what perception of you want people to have. You work with them, they better be your friends, and you welcome them in with open arms, because they may help you find, especially if you don't have an internal audit department, they can help you dig up some, would this be in your closet? Skeleton? Okay. Now I have to say it like Bishop Lawrence Road. Skeleton. Yeah. They can help you find out some skeleton. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, very, very good. Patricia, hopefully, we watched the rating. I think I can't remember the rating, but the rating only went up a notch. I think, is it 66% or 199 countries or something like that? Or is it like we are 100 and something out of 195 countries when it comes to the ease of doing business? Anybody know? But there's a score, there's a rating. Because after
I don't know.
Yeah, after the guy from Compass Point, threatened the government and said all those things and said he was closing Compass Point down, they spoke about it a lot in the news, saying that our rating only dropped 1 notch, so it wasn't bad. But compared to other countries, we are like, I think, 135 out of 195. So.
He's finally closing now this time.
Sorry?
He's closing up shop this time for real.
He's doing it?
So he said they're closing Compass Point, at least the resort section.
Knock the building down, or just let
He's been threatening that for a few years though.
They said that he's closing the resort part of it for sure.
But then what? The buildings will just rot, and he will make no money. But
I
like,
suppose he'll keep the restaurant and bar section open, but the resort is, so he says. I mean, apparently that it's legitimate this time.
There's a sign on the door, say it's supposed to be closed, I think, March 2020. No, 2022.
well, the government
Yeah,
changed, so
2022.
the government changed, so the PLP may comply with his demands, and he may stay.
Oh, that's true.
So
Yeah,
I've heard he is a supporter of the current government.
Okay, yeah, so he could be right here. But no,
I
he
see.
stay at the hotel. The rooms are very expensive. Everybody only is go for the food. Now I only go for the food and the ambiance, and I don't even always go for the food because their chef is a hit and miss. You have to get-
Yeah, he is.
Right.
They're too expensive to be missing. So I speak
I agree.
bad man.
Yeah, the only
mad.
thing is
Yeah, then the
yeah,
food
it's
is
a
awful.
pizza, and that's it. That's it.
Yeah,
And the
pizza is
portions
big,
are-
and you're safe. Yeah.
Miss
Yeah.
Bullet,
Okay, very good.
Miss Bullet, I have
Go
a question.
Go ahead.
From first class from the interclass, we might mention that there were 41 recommendations that this financial transaction dealing with compliance that we were able to pass a lot of them pertaining to our KYC policies and everything. And now we're at this status. So what happened between implementation in 2018 and now? What happened? I mean, because as far as we know, we were compliant largely with those 41 recommendations.
Okay.
I mean, to the point that we were even inviting auditors to come on site or even do it virtually.
Yeah, but if
And
they
now,
come, we wouldn't have been largely compliant. Listen, when they say largely compliant, they mean the law has it in place and it's written properly. Because a lot of times our law is copied from the Netherlands or Cayman, right? And we don't change the name to the Bahamas. That's the first problem with the law, right? The second
Oh.
problem is we put our tax laws in place, but of course we know it would have diminished our offshore um, services, and which is a part of our value proposition, right? And so we say it's against the law to evade customs tax and back, not international taxes. So that was a little glitch there. You see what I mean?
Oh.
So that's
So we
all.
have the
the
we have the
legislation is there, but Lucille and Wayne Monroe could win on a technicality. You know
Wow.
the kind of way?
Oh my gosh. But I thought, I mean, with all these, we are large. I mean, because reading the documents was saying that we are welcoming you to our shores, and then
Yeah.
and
Just
the
believe me, right? We have something to say that. You got to know the
Yeah.
street way, not just the book way. That's why I say when somebody writes an article in the newspaper, please see who the author is or the source of the information. Some people just say things because they have to, because they're in position, right? We couldn't afford getting blacklisted. So of course we had to say, yes, it is fixed and you could come check. But when you come check, we would have been
Oh
scrambling, right?
my gosh.
No, but no, but
Oh,
seriously, we are largely
okay.
compliant in the law. Now, let's look at this realistically. If the law was just updated in 2018, right? No Bahamian paying attention to the law. That's the first thing. Compliance have to now go and knock on every department door and say, listen, the law changed. But compliance, when the law changed, compliance needed some time to know all the changes, to disseminate that information, and then to enforce it, then to train the people, and then to enforce it. And then everybody didn't pay attention to the training because they didn't have time for that. They had targets to meet, they had a bank to run, and they didn't realize we were serious. And so for the first time ever, Central Bank, Securities Commission, Compliance Commission was serious. The last time they gave us a note was 6 years ago and they never come back. So we continued on as normal. And not only that, nobody gave us no money to put no system in place or pay for persons to be trained. Nobody give us no money. You know how much these systems cost, and somebody to train, and a minimum of a low-level compliance officer making $50,000, and you need a department. So where did money come from? Who paying for that, Bernice?
Mm,
Hello?
you're right. You're right. But it's just simply amazing that these inconsistencies catch up with us, whether or not it's written in our laws or not. We
Yeah,
still
but
have to
they
face the
took
music.
21 years to catch up with us, Bernice, so we get another 21.
Yeah.
I guess
We
Okay.
got
being
we got
real,
some
I
time
guess
to
being real,
spare.
no. Honestly, the central bank now has an analytics department. They had to put out job postings, they had to get people trained,
And
and
I
then
saw that
people
they
had
had
to
lots
go
of
out.
lots of advertisements for
Yes,
analysts.
yes, yes. And so those analysts just get on the job. They know what to do yet. And
So
then
we
when they
still got
get to the
so we
bank,
so you say we still
hey,
have about 5 more years then.
yeah, yeah, we on a learning curve. Hey, when they reach the Patricia bank, Patricia ain't gonna tell them nothing. She tell them what Patricia say.
Ooh.
And just what a lot of offshore banks to say, we smarter than them, right? And that's what you say. We smarter than the auditors. Yeah. So in 5 years, and guess what? Don't feel bad because it's not only us. It's when you get the ICA, in the ICA book, they actually go in depth to tell you Switzerland was deficient in these ones. Netherlands was deficient, Ireland was deficient, Germany was deficient. So you'll see across the world, right? And so the
Mm,
FATF didn't even have sufficient staff to go and check all these places. The whole world was deficient. Okay, because again, the bottom dollar matters. You have to if I close out this offshore industry, where will my unemployment is gonna go up? It's already a pandemic. So we have to use a staggered approach so our country will survive. So don't think that
mm,
we did something more than what Ireland or Switzerland did. They do the same thing. Like I told you, my colleague said, in 2018, we had 250 banks and trusts. Now we have 50 and it's only 20. He told me this in 2020. He said, Miss Bullet, I got the most advances. I said, oh no, don't come. I said, don't come. These people is fight with rock and bottle. Do not, job here for us. Please don't come. Okay?
mm.
So that's where the world is at. So we are compliant, and that means our laws are intact. Now we gotta interpret the law. We all just sitting up in the class right now. You all ain't know what to do yet. You all hope
Right,
you all can go to work and do some of these stuff with Miss Bullet say. But
right.
if you work in an institution that is not receptive, they we always do things this way. In fact, a CEO told me a few weeks ago, oh, I have a friend to the central bank who could give me they could call me before they send us a fine. And they could fix it up to make sure we don't get fined. I said, really? And you was the CEO and just saying that out in public?
Bless his
You know
goodness.
what I mean? So don't worry, we could be fine. Okay? But you're doing the right thing. By the time is people start going to jail, you'll already be doing what. And hopefully none of y'all will end up. None of us will be
Mm.
going to jail. Okay? We can know
But
we already would have networked. We could be in Toastmasters, Rotary, and Kiwanis. We could have all our bosom buddies and we could, we could be okay, and we have our revenue streams, so we don't have to compromise ourselves on these jobs. You better listen to Miss Bullet. Things has come to pass here. The government just change. Opportunities, always there. So listen. Okay.
Right.
Any more readings, or we could go into the chapter now.
you go
Okay.
into chapter.
Okay. So we're gonna go into the chapter. Okay, and the chapter 3 talks about terrorist financing and compliance with sanctioned regimes. And of course, the Bahamas was deficient in the terrorist financing laws, especially after we had somebody who was related to September 11 land in Freeport. Um, you know, we only again had the shell in when it comes to um, terrorist financing. So I think the terrorist financing recommendation is number 5 and number 7. They had to be changed, and some meat had to be in there to ensure that if somebody did infiltrate the Bahamas or any institution in the Bahamas, we would be able to prosecute them no matter what country they came from. Okay, and then I think the sanction laws are 24 and 25, because the Bahamas as a whole did not have a proper sanctions framework in place. And so for you who work in the financial services industry or in the compliance department, you would see that quarterly, if you report to the Securities Commission, you send a form 1A or 1B confirming that the persons that are listed on the sanctions list are not on your books, and then annually to the central bank and to the Compliance Commission. And I recently, not recently, but last year, the FIU contacted me and they said, Ms. Bullitt, when you send your your quarterly sanctions attestation to the Securities Commission, please copy us so we'll have a copy. So that's how the sanctions framework was put in place in the Bahamas. The book goes on to talk about what is considered terrorist financing and how the offense is identified, and you can read that in detail. You should have, the persons from intro, you should be familiar with not only international terrorism, but we touched heavily on domestic terrorism, because I said in 2019, there were more than 365 cases of domestic terrorism in the United States. And they say when, and the United States sneezes, we catch a flu. And so therefore, we have seen at least 3 to 4 cases of domestic terrorism happen right here in the Bahamas. So we can't have 365 cases of domestic terrorism. We would have no more Bahamas. Okay, so please keep your eyes and ears open for domestic terrorism as well. Okay, and then we touched last week on the MPOs. I think somebody had brought it up, and we talked about the Bishop Lawrence role and the importance of the foundation being established, because he would be susceptible to, a terrorist who say, Bishop, take 50,000 and feed the people and send me the next 50,000, and I can do this once a month, right? And Paul Bishop would just say that's a blessing from the Lord. He wouldn't think nothing of that. He would be all over Facebook saying how God would do it, right? Right. So this is the of the MPO Act of 219, stating that you must be registered, you must have KYC on all, if it's a foundation, what do you need for a foundation? The council, or who are the council members, and what is to be done if it's a trust, who is the ultimate beneficial owner, or the company, who are the shareholders, okay? And each persons have to present KYC. The MPO has to be registered with the Registrar General, and the Registrar General will do their checks and balances to ensure that when donations are made, you keep an account of what the donation is made and who it comes from, okay? And again, down to the wire, when this law was being implemented, last year we saw ads in the papers from the commercial banks, come in, regularize your account, or it will be closed by a certain date. Also in the papers was, if you are not registered by a certain date, you will be charged $10,000. And we know that Bishop is feeding persons every Wednesday, and the police could have gone down there and fined him $10,000 because he was not registered. Okay, so in the United States, I don't know if you remember when President Bush was president in 2001, and he constantly talked about weapons of mass destruction. And I think in the end they ended up killing, what's the guy's name?
Bin Laden.
Saddam Hussein.
Not Bin Laden, Saddam Hussein. Yeah, my grandma.
Oh, Saddam Hussein.
And they killed him. Right. So he constantly talked about Saddam Hussein, but his father, he wanted to repay Saddam Hussein because his father was an unsuccessful president, because I think he lost the war in the Gulf. And so he had a payment for Saddam over the war in the Gulf because of his father. And so he insisted that, you know, there were weapons of mass destruction, and he had to kill Saddam, and he successfully did that. And then he made some changes to the U.S. Patriot Act, and so it used to be the Dodd-Frank Act, and they expanded it, and I mean, it's must be 1,000 pages on terrorism, and that it says the act is used by the U.S. to pursue its policy objective, fighting foreign official corruption, policing the operations of multinational financial institutions, and limiting the activities of offshore banking centers. And so that means even if you commit a crime in the Bahamas, you remember our days of Nighty Knowles and the White Major, when, you know, they had to make agreements for them to be extradited. Let's just say that same thing happened with Adrian Fox. It seems as if we would have gotten into some international mayhem if they indeed charged Adrian, because, I mean, they charged him $5,000, which was a slap on the wrist. However, if they had said to extradite Adrian Fox, the U.S. in 2019 or 2020 put in an ad out into the newspaper to let the Bahamas know that Adrian Fox was a fugitive. They said, we just want the Bahamas to be aware that Adrian Fox is a fugitive, and he did not show up in court, and he violated section blah, blah, blah of the U.S. Patriot Act and what have you. Now, with this present government, if the U.S. had said extradite him, would that have happened?
Probably not.
Okay, but are we any different? Remember, Trump pardoned a few of his buddies who went to jail for bribery and corruption and all sorts of stuff just before he demitted office, right? So, but nobody talks about America, because America is the most powerful country in the world. And we talked about Animal Farm with countries being, all of us are equal, but some of us are more equal than others, right? And so the U.S. Patriot Act allows the U.S. to, I guess, carry out their laws in various countries. So it says the most significant aspect of the Patriot Act is U.S. banks must take responsible steps to identify the beneficial owners of accounts where they are foreign persons. U.S. banks must identify foreign persons whose funds move through payable or corresponding bank accounts held with them. U.S. banks must apply enhanced due diligence for all foreign private banking customers and international correspondent account relationships with offshore banks. Okay, the jurisdiction of the U.S. courts extends over any person committing an offense involving a financial transaction that occurs in the U.S. And once you deal with correspondent banking, the U.S. has set it up so that all money touches the Fed. And once that money touches the Fed, you now in U.S. territory, and they can prosecute you on their own. Okay, and once your country offers U.S. dollars, which 90% of the countries in the world, or I think it's 89% of the countries in the world, have foreign reserves, and they accept or issue the U.S. dollar. That's an extraterritorial criminal jurisdiction that the U.S. has extended over persons outside the jurisdiction who engages in any act which it has been committed in the U.S. would constitute an offense. So even if the law is not on Bahamian books, like my dear friend, and we're going to talk about him, my dear co-worker, when we get to chapter 8 or 9, we'll talk about him. He was charged with insider trading, and he was removed from, our office. However, when his court case came up, whilst insider trading was a law on our books, he had committed that crime in, say, 2016. And at the time he committed the crime, it was not a law on our books, so he won his case. He did do the insider trading. He was fired for doing it. However, at that time, it was not a law. However, with this extraterritorial criminal jurisdiction, the US saying it ain't no law on Bahamas books, that's fine. It's a law on the US.
So what was Wayne Monroe his lawyer?
Girl, I think he had Lucille.
Or do see it? 'Cause
Yeah,
seems
yeah.
like they're the only
He
two
went
lawyers
whole.
with the
He went
loopholes.
whole. He went whole. He get Lucille, and Lucille say, bring $20,000 or bring your boat, bring your Lexus, bring the Rolex watches. That's what I hear. I don't know. I can't verify that. So y'all don't go repeat Miss Bullet talking.
I know. Just kidding.
No, that's from the streets. Don't say Miss Bullet say. Okay? But we do understand the extraterritorial criminal jurisdiction of the US dollar. We understand that, right?
Yeah, so that would be the half of 2001,
If that would be,
the Patriot Act.
yes, all of that is in the Patriot Act.
In the Patriot of
Okay.
2001. Yeah.
And there is, child, don't try to read it. It's like 100
No.
pages. You could read sections, and the book goes on to talk about section 3.19 of the Patriot Act. It allows the U.S. courts to seize funds in a U.S. account if the funds are held for a non-U.S. bank, which are proceeds of unlawful activity. So we have gotten subpoenas, and they have said, according to section this of the Patriot Act, this money is frozen until further notice. We have gotten production orders. Normally, they send it to the FIU, but we have received them directly from the FIU in the United States. Okay, and they, just as a courtesy, they let our FIU know. Okay, so this means that if a foreign bank, which would be the Bahamas, a foreign bank, has an interbank account in the US with a covered financial institution, the fund shall be deemed to have been deposited into the interbank account in the US, and any restraining order, seizure warrant, or arrest warrant regarding the funds may be served on the covered financial institution. So again, like I said, they have all this money. Once you offer correspondent banking services, and all the major banks do, they have all this money circling through the US Fed, so they can charge you. And I think you can read the newspapers and read about the case on Julius Baer, where Venezuela is a sanctioned country by the US and Canada, but we don't have Venezuela sanction. And so the Bahamas has a big Venezuelan book, and Julius Baer had a big Venezuelan book. And I think the salesperson had just left Julius Baer to go to Gonic Bank. And just before, they took on a new position, one of them said, I'm gonna go on a vacation. So once he walked through US Customs, they arrested him, and he spilled his guts. He talked about all the corruption and the bribery and fraud that was happening at Julius Baer. Julius Baer could not sustain the reputational risk and was shut down. He is now serving 10 years, and he has now implicated 2 other Bahamian banks. Okay?
What's the name you're talking about?
Sorry?
Who is it you're talking about? I didn't hear the name.
I don't know his name, but if you Google Julius Baer Bahamas, and whomever the Venezuelan salesperson who was serving time, he just this happened in 2019, so he just gone to jail for 10 years. Okay, but just Google Julius Baer Bahamas and the case should come up.
Julius who? I didn't hear you.
Julius Baer. That's
Okay.
one of the offshore banks. Yeah, they just closed down. They had about 33 staff. Everybody went home.
Okay.
Miss, what do you mean when they say interbank?
Okay, so interbank just means that you have an account with Deutsche Bank. So Royal Bank accounts the Royal Bank has an account with Deutsche Bank, or something like how the Clearing Banks Association is, you know what I mean? One institution is offering correspondent banking services on behalf of another institution. So you would go to Royal Bank and they use Deutsche Bank or Wells Fargo or Chase. And there are 8 major banks around the world that do correspondent banking. And remember, we talk about the Wolfsburg Group. They are considered the Wolfsburg Group.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have all this money channeled through the Fed, and they're the 8 major banks in the world. You have to use one of them. So what happens is lately, even though the Bahamas has a big Venezuelan book, um, we still have to send wires and stuff for them. And so they normally use the European um, corresponding bank. So they didn't go through the US. So they use any corresponding bank in Europe. However, even the European corresponding banks have cracked down on sending these wires because the way they came at us, like our correspondent bank, we had a US correspondent bank and then we had one in Switzerland. And one day, like I said, I paid salaries and school fees and what have you. And the next week, I was told, and this was our European correspondent bank, we no longer do business with countries that have a CPI index of less than 30, which is the corruption perception index. So of course, Venezuela is on that list. Russia is 27. And so I paid Russian salaries that week. Next week, I had to say, the correspondent bank won't take it. Of course, the US ain't gonna take it, right? Those countries are already blocked. And so I had to pay a school fee in Madagascar. Paid the school fee. Next month, I couldn't pay it. And so what that person basically was de-risk, but de-risk, I can't, de-risk, yeah.
De-risked.
Yeah, de-risk. I don't know where I get this came from. Yeah, de-risk. I'm making up the word, yeah. Because the money is sitting in the Bahamas, they can't send it anywhere. And I told you all the story about Lebanon as well, right? I had a person who had a house in Spanish Wells and Ilusro, where we was playing house insurance and we used to send money for their groceries and stuff like that. And
Oh, that guy, yeah.
When the Lebanon bombings happened, because his address, he lived in Eleuthera in Spanish Wells now in the Bahamas. His accounts were in Nassau. But because he had a Lebanese address and the Lebanese prime minister had spoken out against Netanyahu because he automatically felt like that bombing was a terrorist attack. Trump was in power. Trump and Netanyahu is the president of Israel, are bosom buddies. So Trump put out sanctions against Lebanon, and I could not pay that guy's house insurance. I could not send money to the food fair for his groceries just because he had a Lebanese address. Okay.
This was for his house insurance locally that you could not pay?
In Spanish Wells, yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Everybody had blocked Lebanon. For at least 3 months after that bombing. Until I don't know if he apologized, but until they announced that, they had captured some boats prior had some chemical gas. Some boats were crossing their seas and they had stopped them, and like their defense force had captured them and put the boats into storage, not realizing that they had this gas on it and the gas had just exploded. So I don't know if they had apologized and then Trump had released the sanctions, or if the government had changed and they released the sanctions. But yeah, that's what happened. And so then you lose customers because now they can't send their money around the world. They can't do business. They can't order inventory. What do they do? And so they have to try and go to banks in their country with very high fees and very high exchange rates. And so that's why, some offshore services are still attracted. Okay. So that's the US Patriot Act. And that's the section what is most important. And there is normally a question on the exam about section 319, because if you if you offer correspondent banking services, there's a questionnaire from the Wolfsburg group it used to be 28 questions, and now that the laws have changed, it's now 200. And so one of the questions they ask, are you a foreign bank? And you say yes. That means you are foreign to the US. And if you are a foreign bank, do you abide by section 3.19 of the US Patriot Act? And I had somebody in an executive team say, Ms. Bullitt, you are incorrect. We are a foreign bank. We do not abide by that. And I had to pull out this book and say, yes, we do. okay? Because we offer correspondent banking services through a US intermediary,
Right.
okay? So make sure-
Essentially, once the currency hits US soil, it's considered corresponding bank
Yeah. That's what,
worthy.
yeah, and you are, if you offering that service to another financial institution, like we offered that, our bank did wires for Antigua and Barbuda. So that bank out of Antigua and Barbuda had to be risk rated high. Then we did it for a bank out of Puerto Rico, they had to be risk rated high. Okay, so if you offer that, because you essentially are sending wires on behalf of a third party, and so you don't get the KYC, or you're not seeing the person and Antigua and Barbuda, they couldn't get a correspondent bank because they are Schedule 2 country, which means they don't have all the AML framework in place. And so we were doing their wires on their behalf, and you're saying, listen, you don't ask for KYC to open an account, but we need it. So if this person wants to send a wire, you ask them for their passport and their social security number or whatever it is, and their proof of address, and you send it to us, we will verify it, then we send the wire. But our
So-
correspondent came and said that was nesting, so we had to stop that in any event.
So what the Patriot Act is saying, if the US ever calls for your bank to identify the person behind the source of funds, then you must provide them with the KYC information.
Yes, or they don't send the wire.
I understand. Okay.
And after you don't provide them 3 or 4 times, they start to call your executive. In fact,
Right.
we had Northern Trust, 10 of them flew to the Bahamas, and they said, we are here to let y'all know that y'all are to stop sending the wires for Antigua and Barbuda, because y'all are in some of the Patriot Act, and it's called nesting, because they don't have the framework in place. And so until they put the framework in place, you cannot send wires on their behalf. So you are to stop those wires immediately, or they'll close you out. And you're going to report to OFAC, who will block every correspondent bank from doing business with you.
So who is calling for, sorry, who will call upon your bank to provide the information? The correspondent bank in the US or the Fed?
In the correspondent bank in the US.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
they will decide whether or not they want to do business with you.
Yes. And if you lose your correspondent bank, then your bank has to be closed down. Because if somebody
Right.
goes correspondent, and I know 1 or 2 banks who have outsourced their correspondent services to another person because they cannot get accounts anywhere because of the same Julius Baer being implemented in that case. They
Right.
are now considered high risk, and Northern Trust and those other ones, they say, we can't do business with them. And so now you have like a major bank, like, let me see what I could call ABC Bank sending wires to EFG Bank or something like that. You know what I mean? So they can stay open, but if they can't get correspondent bank services in the offshore world, you want to step away from the check.
Okay.
Because essentially nobody walks into your bank to make a deposit or withdrawal. Everything is done through wires, right?
Right.
Yeah. So if your wiring department outsourced, because you can't, if you can't get a corresponding bank relationship, that means you have been de-risked. Why I keep saying it? I don't know.
De-risk.
De-risk, right? And when they open up accounts for you, they ask you, what percentage of your business is oil and gas? What percentage of your business is red diamonds? What percentage of your business is marijuana? Okay, so they want to know what percentage is sanctioned countries, and if those percentages are too high, they don't open that account for you. They don't open.
I see.
Yeah. So you have to look at your risk appetite. Okay.
So essentially you're saying if the marijuana business is too high, or the, blood diamonds business is too high, then you as a banker will say, you know what, this customer is gonna cause too much attention or bring too much attention towards my
Too much,
organization.
too much reputational risk. When we went
Right.
to New York, Morgan Stanley told us point blank, we don't do business with high risk countries, and we in high risk. And they said proof to us, and we didn't complete a country rating from 250 and 216, so we weren't able to open that account. And that's what because I told you the story about bringing our trading desk. We paid Switzerland $100,000. The traders sit in Nassau, and we paid Switzerland $100,000 for our trading desk.
This is why?
Yeah, they said because the Bahamas is its perception is that we're high risk and they don't do business with high risk countries, and until Transparency International or the Basel Committee confirms the risk rating for the Bahamas, we couldn't open that account. So today we are still paying $100,000 to Switzerland for our trading desk with the traders sitting in the Bahamas.
So you say that we are not high risk, right?
No, we're not.
How do we prove that to other banks? Like how do
Committee, the Basel Committee or the Transparency International, they risk rate countries.
So that means they could just, see that information to the Basel Committee then.
But we haven't completed our risk assessment for the Bahamas since 2015, 2016.
So hold on. So at that date and time, we were not high risk, not now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, at that in 2014, remember now, in 2014, 2015, the gaming center was regulated for the first time. So they wasn't even on that. They mentioned gaming. The real estate law firms and account firms just get regulated in 290, so they ain't on that.
Right.
We on a learning curve. The law just changed in 2018, so now the Bahamas knows that they have to, we are now seeing the net effect in our institutions, not being able to open an account and being, strapped to Switzerland with all these ridiculous fees. You know what I mean? Because we can't get these accounts open. So hopefully, on that update form that I sent you all, they said that they will complete all the, the credit unions and the money services business now fall under central bank. Everything is regulated. Everybody has completed the assessment, and there are 3 or 4 chapters on risk. So we'll complete the assessment, that will help the country get things in place. In the interim, the governor of the central bank had to, create the sand dollar, which is a digital asset, so we're not seen as cash intensive. He had to decrease the leverage. He had to put in certain initiatives. So when we finally submit, which they said they submitted in March 2021, but I haven't heard any word of it being submitted, and I definitely haven't heard any response. And now the government changed, so if they did not submit that in 2021, God knows when it'll be submitted. Yeah, we cannot come out as high risk. If we come out as high risk,
But Ms. Fuller, the sand dollar, that could only be used in the Bahamas, eh?
yes, but Scotia and the Canadian banks, they don't open accounts for money services businesses. They don't open accounts for gaming houses because it's too cash intensive. So now they strategically place the sand dollar through all the money services businesses. So now they should no longer be unbanked, and they should be able to open up accounts. And hopefully, if they can encourage people to use the sand dollar in the gaming houses won't be unbanked. So, it'll be less cash intensity, and that's one of the categories. There are 14 categories. We covered this in intro. There are 14 categories on which they rate you. One is the mutual evaluation agreement. And so this is why we had to quickly become largely compliant. We had to quickly fix all those laws and implement them. And now we have to enforce them.
Wow.
People still don't believe it's true, because I have a lot of people who showed up in this class from the credit unions, and it's like, Ms. Buller, I don't know why they're making me do this, and blah, blah, blah. And, you imagine being in a position for 20 years and you never had to do it. And now somebody's saying, you have to do it, or you will be fined, or you could go home. And I've had somebody in the class who showed up to the class and say, I know nothing about compliance. I've just been there for 20 years. They chose me. I'm in this class. I don't know what to do. And he was let go. halfway through the class, he was let go because he just did not know what to do. And the risk assessment was being enforced in 2019, and it had to be, the AML risk assessment had to be submitted by June of 2019, and he missed that date. And then the enterprise one had to be submitted by October, and he missed that date. The credit union was fined $50,000, and then the Securities Commission was charging, fining you $5,000 a day every day that it was not submitted. So, yeah, some people went home. Okay, but we'll talk about all of that when we get to it. Okay.
Okay.
So we understand the U.S. Patriot Act. We understand the extra territorial, they can come in and see us. We know that when we pull out that Wilkesboro questionnaire, even though we're not a U.S. bank, because of this extra territorial, we must say yes, we are to abide by. Okay, and then again, back to George Bush and these weapons of mass destruction. He didn't want people to think that he was crazy, and I don't know if there were some or none. I don't know to this day. However, that's how PF got on to the end. So there used to be AML CFT, now it's AML CFT PF, right? Or CTF. You use the CFT CTF interchangeably. Okay, and that's where the proliferation of weapons comes in at the end of AML. And again, that was one of the updates of 218. Okay, and you should have read, but we should know by now what proliferation of weapons is, right? And it says the act of providing funds or financial services which are used in whole or in part to manufacture, acquisition, possession, development, export, transshipment of any type of weapon of mass destruction, I guess, or chemical weapon, or dual use of goods for, what does it say, for non-legitimate purposes. Okay, so that's where the proliferation comes in, from that weapons of mass destruction thing. And it says proliferation has many forms. It involves the transfer and export of technology, goods, software, services, or expertise that can be used in nuclear, chemical, or biological weapon related program. And I don't know if we are aware, a few weeks ago, the gas line, the Russian gas line was hacked. So I guess they would, if they were able to find the hackers, they would be able to charge them on the proliferation of weapons. Okay. And like I said, that's the definition. That's normally a multiple choice question. There are sometimes some question on, explain proliferation financing. How does it differ? At the bottom of the page, it says weapon proliferation financing differs from money laundering in several aspects, as both criminal activity or legitimately sourced funds or methods of raising funds, means that transactions related to financing may not exhibit the same characteristics as conventional money laundering. Okay, but you can read all through that. The FATF has written some typology reports on proliferation financing, and the FATF reported export controls are the primary counter weapons proliferation safeguards because international regimes determine the nature of controlled goods. Controlled goods require export licenses from national authorities, and licenses are issued to specific end users. Okay, so like I said, you can read through so you can ensure that you have the definition down pat and you understand how proliferation of weapons works. Okay, is this clear so far? Ms. Bullis starting to feel confused. Y'all give me some feedback and talk. Y'all read this.
I must say the proliferation point was a bit confusing for me when I read it.
Okay, so what about it? We understand that's the PF, right? Proliferation of weapons. And we know about the stories of the weapons of mass destruction when George Bush was president, correct?
Right.
Right. And so we know Iran, it is thought that, well, years ago, the US used to boast about that they are the most powerful nation in the world, right? So they say that they have 2,000 atomic bombs. Then China says they have 8, and then North Korea have 2. And I don't know why Kim Jong-un always going on if he have 2 compared to 2,000, right? And so,
Right.
of course, we know that the US have all these outlying islands that they, in Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, they acquired some land, the Guantanamo Bay area, and in the Bahamas or tech, right? And I have some friends who are divers who say when they get in Andros, they could barely even dive because submarines all around protecting something in this
That's
massive
right.
body of water,
Yep.
right? So
Mhm.
what we think
Wow.
in this mass body of water right in Andros?
Okay.
It's 2,000 atomic bombs, or
Right.
some at least there, right? Would you
Well,
like
I guess so. This is news to
Actually,
me.
Me too.
they make the bombs for wars down there at Ortac and Andres.
Okay, okay. And somebody told me that a lot of persons that worked at Ortec end up with cancer. If you look in the news,
Yeah, a lot of cancer. Yeah. Mhm.
yes, or yeah, from the gunpowder and the various different chemicals that they use to make these weapons of mass destruction, right? And if you look in the newspaper when they hire it, they always want somebody with weapons training and gunpowder or something, and you must be a US citizen and all these different things. So with it's kind of obvious what they're doing down there, right? And
This
I
is a
thought
place
these
in Andros you're
2,000,
talking about?
yes, Andros, Bahamas, the Artec base.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I never heard of it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
You all heard about Artec and that's just one of they have bases all around the world. They have Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Um, Puerto Rico has one. All around the world, they have different bases where they store in various islands. So if they have to attack, of course, persons are gonna come on the US front right away, but they will have, I guess, be able to attack from Andros, be able to attack from Puerto Rico, from various islands around the world. Okay? So and I'm almost certain that's where they store in all these mass weapons.
Yep.
Yeah. And we actually had an account where somebody approached us from the US Army and they said, in our risk appetite, we say that we had to add to our risk appetite that we would not do business with any type of proliferation businesses, right? Or weapons um um business, or what have you. But this was the US Army, and we wrote the regulator and we asked them, US Army must open us an account. They say, oh, sure, no problem. And I'm certain Artec has accounts at the commercial banks. And they say, yeah, go ahead. And we say, well, we just amended our AML laws to say that we don't do business with anybody who engages in weapons proliferation. And so they say, okay, you can change your AML policy. So what? Yeah, that's what they say. So we opened the account for the US Army now. 2 months later, I would think that the person who was in charge, because Trump was president of the US Army, talking to the person who in charge of the Israeli Army, Netanyahu Army, because Trump and Netanyahu are bosom buddies. And so Israel now contacted us and said, oh, we have a lot of counterparts that say they bank with you and blah, 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 and we wish to open an account. And so we said, well, we just open it for the US, but that's the US. Are we going to open it for the Israeli army? And that had to be taken to the board, and the board came back and said no. So it just depends on who the country is. Again, all of us are equal. Some of us are more equal than others.
And
So
this,
like I say, we adjusted our appetite, we adjusted our policies and everything to accommodate the US Army. But I was scared anyway for Israel, so I was glad they said no.
right.
Right. So do you see the definition of proliferation, and when it says It has many forms, but ultimately involves transfer and export of technology, goods, software, service, and goes on.
Yes, a
Yeah.
whole list of,
Right.
of things.
Biological weapons, chemical weapons, nuclear weapons. Okay? All of that.
Technological, yeah.
Yeah, it covers all of that. Okay? We good?
Gotcha.
Okay.
Look like
Yep.
the US wants to control everything.
Of course, the most powerful country in the world, right?
And they say that for every chance they get.
But what does the Bible say? The Bible say Babylon must fall, right? And a lot of people say the US is Babylon, but that's another story.
Listen,
That's another
Bullard.
Sorry, I gone south. We all be me back in because the satellites watching before I be missing and y'all can't find me.
Hey, and they catch all of us because we connected on this
Oh,
Zoom.
okay. Oh, there you are. Encouraging
Don't
me.
worry, I already
Association.
apologized to the FBI, just in case.
Just in
You're
case
the
they got
association.
Yeah,
You know
I
they
done,
have a stop.
yeah, I done say this.
I done say my grandma used to love Saddam Hussein. My grandma used to sit there when it was the war in the Gulf, and she used to say, "I wonder what Saddam doing today."
Oh, gee.
Okay.
They
I
probably
always say
was
this
watching
is
a
just
house
a
on the
joke.
satellite.
Hey, listen to Miss Bullard, it's a joke. Okay, good. At least you're still awake. Okay.
Yeah, man.
So let's look at sanctions. And again, on the screen, this is the Ministry of, everybody can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And it says, and a lot of people get confused when we talk about sanctions, but when we report, it says international obligations, United Nations sanctions. Okay, so please know the terminology because we wrote, you know, tell us about your framework for your international obligations, and person say, Miss Bullet, we don't know what an international obligation is. So make sure you know that they are referring to sanctions, okay? And so this is the list for the Bahamas in terms of countries that we have sanctions against. And so what that means is we do not do business with them, okay? And sorry?
No, I just pretty cool.
Okay, and so there are different types of sanctions. If you look in the fourth column, it'll tell you asset freeze, or you see a travel ban or arms embargo. So there
Sorry.
Yes.
For the Bahamas and Liberia, right at number 6,
Mhm.
there is a travel ban for what persons coming from Liberia, is it?
Okay, so let's pull that one up so you can see what it says. So we'll click on it.
Uh-huh.
And then I hope this computer can download. Okay, 1 second. We'll click on it so you'll see. So it'll tell you exactly what happens. Okay, very good. And you can see how old these is from the paper.
Wow,
Right?
yeah.
And
Wow.
to tell you the truth, there was, sanctions were not volatile at all. Once a sanction was in place, it was in place for 20 and 30 years. However,
Okay.
when Trump came in and started talking to Putin and Kim Jong-un, then this was the first time we see sanctions being volatile and moving up and down and names being added regularly. So this is ours. It says nobody can supply or sell to Liberia by way of Bahamian registered vessel or aircraft. Then it says freezing of funds and financial assets.
No.
And then it goes down to tell you the various things. Now, I think it's Liberia. I'm gonna pull up the one for this is Liberia. There's another one. Libya. Let me pull up Libya because Libya is a travel. I don't see they must have, unless it's not in right here, Libya.
Libya there, okay.
Yeah. So it says a no-fly zone, arms embargo, and travel ban. And I will pull that up.
Okay.
So you can read that, and then you can read that, and tell us if you're coming from to or from Libya, what happened. Okay, so read 4 and 5 for us, please.
No aircraft registered in Libya or owned or operated by Libyan nationals or companies shall be permitted to take off from, land in, or overfly the Bahamas unless that flight has been approved in advance by the committee or in the case of emergency landing. I see. 5, freezing of funds, etc. Subject to paragraph 6, no funds, other financial assets, and economic resources held in banks or financial institutions licensed in the Bahamas that are owned or controlled directly or indirectly by persons or entities listed in the schedule, and any additional person or entity designated by the committee shall be made available to a person or entity mentioned in paragraph A, subparagraph A and B, or a person or entity acting on behalf of or at the discretion of a person or entity mentioned in subparagraphs A and B. I see. So there's no flying from Libya here.
Yep. So all
If
of
they
that.
catch a connecting flight though.
Well,
Right.
you know, from the United States, you cannot fly to Cuba. But what do we do?
Right. And
What do
I
They go
asked
through
that
Nassau.
do?
They go through
They come
Nassau.
into Nassau.
Yeah.
They give you a detachable visa that does not stick in your passport, and
Right.
you throw it away, because if you know, you could be ostracized if you go back to the United States and they see that Cuban stamp in your passport. So they give you
Yeah.
a paper. You know, it's always a black market. It's always a way around, right?
But
Wow.
I asked the question when I saw Liberia, because I flew on Liberia Air. So it was interesting to see that just now, but Liberia Air was not flying to the Bahamas. I caught a flight between Spain and Miami on Liberian Air. So that was interesting. Okay, so you can make the flights, you just can't, the planes just can't land here
Yeah, or fly over. Like say they cross over.
in our
Now, you know,
airspace.
we getting in control of our airspace.
They can't
Okay.
fly over under us.
Oh, definitely not.
Or
You definitely wouldn't fly over us. But it does not everybody. You see, Somalia has an arms embargo. They don't have a no-fly.
Right.
So you have
Yeah,
to,
it depends.
right. It depends on what sanction they have against them.
Not surprised about Sierra Leone.
But you
That's
do
Bomb
see,
City.
right. But you see, Liberia does have the travel ban.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you didn't let, they probably gave you a visa. But I mean,
No, I flew from Madrid to Miami, but it was on Liberia Air.
Oh, okay.
You see? So the
Yeah.
plane it was their aircraft, but it was between Spain and Miami.
Yeah, so the stamp in your passport would be from Spain and
Right.
Miami, not from Liberia. Right.
Right.
Yeah. With these sanctioned countries, you have to make sure that they give you a visa, because they already know. So they work.
Yeah.
So of course, that means no tourists come into their country. And so they give you a disposable visa, and they stamp that, and you just discard it, you know. After.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So it says compliance with sanctions regimes. In the international community, sanctions and embargoes are used for the following motives: to encourage a change in behavior of a target country, to apply pressure on a target country, or as an enforcement tool when international peace and security has been threatened. Okay? Targeted sanctions refer to both sanctions and embargoes, which means that there's a targeted restriction focused on individual people or organizations. Now, the other day, because we do business with Russia, there was some sanction on lumber. So here it is, I could pay salaries, I could pay school fees in Russia, but I could not send a wire for lumber. Okay? So when you deal with those foreign countries that are high risk, you have to actually go in to the UN site and see exactly what the sanction is, because it could be on a good or a service. It doesn't mean that Russia is banned entirely, but some goods or services is banned in that country.
What would that mean? Why was there a lumber sanction? Is it that there was some issue with how they produced lumber? Some
Yeah, I think
unethical
I'm
issue?
not certain that it's not on the top of my head. I'll have to go and research exactly what happened, but it was
Mm,
that's a consistent one. That wasn't one just for that period. You know,
okay.
that's a normal some type of lumber. You cannot. There's a ban on
Or importing it, Harry.
something to that effect. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
Do we
Yeah,
have
so
any
like I say,
current,
if you
any recent sanctions? Because these are pretty old.
But this is the Bahamas site. So this was the government website now. You could call the
And it's
Ministry of
probably
Foreign
not even
Affairs.
updated.
Yeah. This our site and this was the Bahamas. So they would need to update the site and let us know. And again, like I said, we got noted for our sanctions framework. So this should be current. You know what I mean? Even though that they are very old. But we haven't heard, like I say, for years. Normally it's the US and Canada, like that has Venezuela sanctioned and Cuba sanctioned, because of course, we have direct flights into Cuba. So it's not us. Okay?
All right.
That travel ban that we had on Haiti, that's what would be
Okay,
considered like a sanction?
Yeah. So let's see if Haiti is not on this even before that travel ban.
I
Because of
doubt.
the immigration problem, right? But no, we have flights.
Because we have a whole consulate. We have a whole consulate there. in Haiti.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Right.
But they did
Yeah,
have
but
they had a travel ban though.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
through the
Just
through
for
the
this
COVID. So
COVID
that should have been updated and posted here. So I guess it's not as current as possible. Right. Okay, so it says measures applied
Yeah.
targeted sanctions are embargoes on exporting or supplying arms and related materials, travel bans on named individuals, and you will see if you go to the UN site or the Canadian site or OFAC, you will see that they list names, the Maduro and his entire family out of Venezuela. They have specific names, and you cannot do business with them if you're a US citizen. Now, our major shareholder in an institution that I worked for was US, and we had a large Venezuelan book. So we had the right OFAC to ask him if it was a conflict, because he was a US citizen. But they never responded to us. But we were very afraid that if the major shareholder is US, you cannot own a bank that does business with a sanctioned country. So yeah, they never responded to us. So bans on import of raw materials or goods from sanctions target financial sanctions on individuals and government bodies and associated companies. Okay. Then the use of sanctions can be grouped into 5 main categories, and it's counterterrorism, conflict resolution, protection of civilians, non-proliferation, and democratization. Okay, so ensure that you know these 5 main categories. Ensure that you understand the use of sanctions and what targeted sanctions are. Okay, and it's going on to say that the UN has imposed sanctions on South Africa, Southern Rhodesia, Somalia, Liberia, Yugoslavia, Angola, and we had a very large Angolan book the other day. And I mean, that bank shut down because of that. Okay, because Angola has all kind of issues with the government. We had the government account of Angola. It was crazy, and so those various countries. The next important thing, it tells you, in the book goes on to tell you about, OFAC and Office of Foreign Assets in the US. They, Lloyd's Bank, and how many penalties and financial breaches and what they were charged. And by now, some of you should have watched Dirty Money, and yeah, you should see these big million fines. But if you watch Dirty Money, you would see sometimes it's just a slap on the wrist for the banks. Okay, so like I said, it's important to know the categorizations. The book talks about the Office of Foreign Asset Control, and normally when we open an account, we don't only world check, but we also do a sanction check, and sometimes sanctions checks are built into world checks, and so that's good. You have to do one check, but if it's not, then you have to go to the OFAC site and you just put in the name, and it tells you if there are any US sanctions against that company or that name. Most recently, when it was the pandemic, there were outcries online, and you can probably Google this and look at the videos where the president of Venezuela came and said that, they would be, because they are sanctioned countries, they couldn't get PPE equipment, they couldn't get the equipment that was needed, and they needed help. And so I think China helped Venezuela, and then the Cuban prime minister came on and said the same thing. And I think China sent them some aid. Then Iran had asked for help from the UN with PPE equipment and some funding. And the US tried to block Iran from getting any money because Iran is sanctioned. However, the UK, the United Kingdom, stepped in and they loaned them 500,000 euros to assist them with the pandemic. So even though it was a pandemic, the US, Donald Trump had even stopped a shipment coming to us, citing that he thought drug dealers were on the boat or they were transporting drugs. But
that's the COVID test, right? With the COVID test?
No, it was with the PPE equipment. The US had a shortage. The US had a shortage, and he said if his country has a shortage, he's not shipping out any PPE equipment to other countries, and so he stopped that shipment. But of course, the UN had to get involved because he did not only stop our shipment, he stopped 2 other shipments, citing all may have been drug related, and then the UN stepped in, and that's how we were able to get our PPE equipment. We also helped Dominica. We took an airplane of Cuban doctors to Dominica from Cuba, and then we took no, we didn't. The Bahamas Air took Cuban doctors to Dominica, and then Cuban doctors also flew into Italy at a time, and like they were having like 10,000 deaths a day. So even though they were sanctioned and could not get aid and help from around the world, they sent their doctors, and we all know that Cuba is known to have some of the best doctors in the world. Okay, so there's a question, I think, on your homework on how did sanctioned countries get aid during COVID-19? And like I said, there you can Google Iran getting the 500,000 euros from the UK, the Cuban doctors going to Italy, the Bahamas sending Bahamas Air flights to take the Cuban doctors to Dominica, and then China helping Venezuela and Cuba. Okay.
Now, when you say,
Can you repeat the?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask her to repeat the part of Bahamas Air again, please.
Bahamas Air took Cuban doctors to Dominica.
You said something else about Cuba then, because I have that part.
Yeah,
no?
so Cuban doctors went to Italy as well at a time at the COVID. They were having like 10,000 deaths a day. At a very scary time, I think 50 doctors went from Cuba to Italy to assist the Italian doctors.
And Bahamas Air took them?
No, Bahamas Air only took them to Dominica.
Okay.
They caught another flight to Italy, yeah. Yeah, so one set of doctors went to Dominica, where Bahamas Air helped by taking them. And one set of doctors went to Italy, but some other airline took them.
I noticed the question says, explain how sanctioned countries had received assistance, right? And when you say sanctioned countries, you mean sorry, who would have sanctioned these countries? How do we know that they're characterized as sanctioned countries?
Well, we see our list and we know that Cuba and Venezuela are sanctioned.
Okay, so we're going by the Bahamian list. The Bahamas is list.
Bahamian list or the US on the Canadian list. So the
Okay.
US has Canada. You could go on the OFAC site and pull
Right.
out countries, but Venezuela, Iran, and Cuba are the sanctioned countries that needed aid, and they got aid from other countries in the world, whilst the US tried to block it.
Okay.
Yeah. So they got the UN involved. Okay, and then at the IMF level, the US tried to block the IMF from loaning money to Iran, but 100 countries around the world out of 195 borrowed money for the pandemic from the IMF.
Right.
Okay, and so the last thing is, again, designing a sanctions framework. That's a popular question. In order to put a framework in place, you need documented policies and procedures.
Ms. Miller, could you repeat what you just said, the last thing?
I said a popular question is
Right.
how to put a sanctions framework in place.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Go on.
And so the framework, to put a sanctions frameworks in place, you need a documented policies and procedures, including risk assessments. You need to define roles and responsibilities. Who is responsible for reporting? Who is responsible to ensure that accounts are not open with the sanctioned countries? You need to raise awareness and communication through communication and training. You need to monitor and screen systems against sanctions lists. And again, you would have wires flying all around the world. And like I say, in countries like Russia, it could be arms or lumber or all sorts of stuff. You need an escalation process in place. Like Israel could have said, will you just open an account for the US and you can't open an account for us? That's discrimination, right? And so you need that escalation process and that de-risking process in place up front. So you say, well, our policy states blah, 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 blah. Well, and we didn't just create this. This was already in place, okay? And then you need, and so across the board, everybody's on board with how the decisions will be made in terms of compliance, approved accounts, and if it's high risk, it goes to the AML committee, and if it's a PEP, then it goes to the board. And so all of that needs to be in place. And then you need requirements for reviewing sanctions related process. Again, like I said, we already sent it to the Securities Commission, and now the FIU is asking for us to send it to them. Okay?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, so that's a lot of information. That's a lot. Miss Bullish feel like she could fall out. I overwhelmed myself. I also.
Yeah. This
chapter was heavy.
It's heavy, but it's like I said, it's the easiest questions on the exam because during COVID, how did sanctioned countries? We had watched all the videos, right? During COVID, we had just switched to online, so that was a very easy question to answer. And there was like 3 sanctioned questions on the exam, so people were very happy with the framework and the categories. So it's easy to answer along with the tax question, easy to answer.
You
So
mean three?
it sounds
three
complex, but
essay
very
questions?
easy once you understand it. Sorry?
You said 3 questions on the exam. You meant 3 essay questions or
No, 1
combination
year,
of
1 year. 1 year, you get 10 choices and you have to answer 4. Out of the 10, there were 3 questions on sanctions 1 year.
I follow.
It does not mean that'll happen again.
Okay.
Yeah, it could happen again. Y'all could just make it happen again this year.
Exactly.
But you see, at first when we started, it may not have been clear, but now it's clear, and you see the answer, right?
Somewhat. I have to go
Somewhat.
over it. I'll have to
Right.
go over it again.
We could have a beautiful Christmas, just,
We'll touch on it again when we get to review class.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then
I'm
you listen
free.
to the recording and answer the questions for homework, and you should be okay.
It's supposed to be
Hi,
send us a recording, or we have to go online and get it.
You have to go to Miguel. Miguel deals with all the recording. So
Okay.
just send him an email, and he should direct you to how to access it.
Okay.
Hi, Miss B. Good evening. Just I might have missed it, so don't push me down for it. But I'm just wondering if there was an assignment sent out anytime soon, or as I've just joined a class.
Okay, so did you get the welcome message?
No, ma'am. Welcome
Okay.
message. No.
Okay, so there are 3 attachments in the welcome message.
Okay.
One
Okay.
is instructions on the homework, and once you read it, it should be clear as mud. Then please
Okay.
read it. Okay, and then
Yeah.
there's classwork. After each class, try and complete the classwork. And if you have any questions at the beginning of the next class, you ask about the classwork, just to make sure that you are clear and that you can answer the questions fully.
Okay.
Okay, so there are about 3 or 4 attachments that I'm gonna send you the welcome. What's your name?
Shakira. Shakira Alton.
Yes. Can you spell the email, please? Shakira?
Sorry, SHE. I was on mute. Sorry, SHEKIRA41@gmail.com.
Okay, so Shakira, I just sent it to you, so you should have gotten all the attachments. So one says instructions that has the homework, and each homework has a date that's attached to it.
Yes, ma'am.
You choose one, and then you complete that homework.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay, and then
thank you
there's
again.
a sheet that has classwork on it, and you complete the classwork, and you answer each question. Once the class is over, you attempt the classwork and let me know at the next class if you have any questions.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome. So read over the 2 sheets, and then next week let me know, or you can send me an email if you have any questions or concerns.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay. Any other questions? Are you all ready to let your brain rest?
Yes.
Yeah, rest your brain.
Yes.
Rejuvenate yourself and feel better, and then look back at the homework. Okay, take a little break. Okay, so we'll end there, and we'll pick up again on Saturday morning.
Hallelujah.
Yeah, but this is achievable. We can do this. Okay.
All right. Okay. Good
All right. So
night.
y'all have a fabulous 2 days, and I'll see y'all again on Saturday.
On Saturday.
Okay, good night.
Okay. Bye.
Take
Good
care.
night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Oh, good night.